In the year 1100 AD, Constantinople was the richest and most powerful city in the Christian world. Standing between Europe and Asia, the city controlled one of the most important crossroads on Earth. Ships carrying silk, spices, gold, and grain passed through its waters every day. Merchants from distant lands filled its markets, and travelers arriving from the east often believed they had reached the wealthiest city on the planet. For many visitors, Constantinople was unlike anything they had ever seen. While most medieval cities were small and vulnerable, Constantinople was enormous, wealthy, and protected by some of the strongest defenses ever built. This was not just another medieval city. It was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the continuation of the Roman Empire that had survived for centuries after the fall of Rome itself. And nowhere in Europe could match its size, wealth, or power. Approaching the city from the sea, the first thing travelers noticed were the massive defensive walls stretching across the land. The famous Theodosian Walls formed a powerful barrier protecting Constantinople from invasion. Built with multiple layers of stone walls, towers, and defensive structures, they extended nearly 6 kilometers across the western side of the city. For centuries, these walls had stopped invading armies from entering the capital. Many enemies had tried to breach them, but very few had succeeded. Beyond the walls rose a skyline unlike anything else in medieval Europe. Towers, domes, palaces, and churches dominated the horizon, reflecting the wealth and prestige of the Byzantine Empire. At the center of the city stood one of the most extraordinary buildings ever constructed, Hagia Sophia. Completed in the 6th century under Emperor Justinian, Hagia Sophia was more than a church. It was a symbol of imperial authority and divine power. Its enormous dome seemed to float above the city, visible from far across the harbor. Inside, golden mosaics covered the walls, reflecting light from hundreds of lamps and candles. Visitors often wrote that stepping inside Hagia Sophia felt like entering a heavenly space unlike anything on Earth. But Constantinople was far more than its monumental buildings. It was a vast and crowded city filled with life. Historians estimate that hundreds of thousands of people lived inside the city walls during the medieval period, making it one of the largest cities in the world at that time. Its streets were constantly busy with merchants, craftsmen, soldiers, monks, nobles, and travelers from distant regions. Greek was the language of daily life, but in the markets one could hear Arabic, Latin, Armenian, Persian, and many other languages spoken by traders and visitors. Constantinople stood at the center of a network connecting 3 continents, and its population reflected that diversity. At the heart of the city stood the Hippodrome, one of the most famous arenas of the ancient world. This massive stadium was the center of public life in Constantinople. Tens of thousands of people gathered there to watch chariot races, one of the most popular entertainments in the Byzantine Empire. The atmosphere during races was intense, with crowds cheering for their favorite teams. But the Hippodrome was more than a place for entertainment. It was also a powerful stage for politics. Spectators often shouted demands or complaints directly to the emperor during races. Rival factions known as the Blues and the Greens competed fiercely, and their rivalries sometimes erupted into violent riots that threatened the stability of the empire itself. Near the Hippodrome stood the Great Palace of Constantinople, the residence of the Byzantine emperors. This enormous complex overlooked the Sea of Marmara and served as the political heart of the empire. Within its walls were vast audience halls, gardens, private chapels, administrative offices, and ceremonial spaces where imperial authority was displayed. From this palace, emperors governed territories stretching across the eastern Mediterranean. While emperors ruled within the palace walls, daily life continued throughout the crowded districts of the city. Narrow streets wound between houses, workshops, and bustling marketplaces. Artisans crafted jewelry, metalwork, textiles, pottery, and weapons. Bakers filled the air with the smell of fresh bread, while vendors sold olives, fruits, and spices brought from distant lands. The sounds of trade, conversation, and movement echoed through the city's streets from morning until night. Constantinople thrived largely because of its extraordinary location. The city stood beside the Golden Horn, a natural harbor that protected hundreds of ships from storms and enemy fleets. Merchant vessels from Venice, Genoa, the Middle East, and the Black Sea arrived constantly, unloading cargo from across the known world. Silk traveled westward from Asia. Spices arrived from India and distant trade routes. Grain came from the fertile lands of Egypt. Furs, honey, and raw materials arrived from the northern regions. These trade networks made Constantinople one of the wealthiest cities on Earth. Unlike many cities in medieval Europe, Constantinople also benefited from strong organization and infrastructure. Massive aqueducts supplied fresh water to the population. Public baths continued Roman traditions of hygiene and social life. Paved streets allowed people and goods to move through the city efficiently. Imperial officials regulated markets to maintain order and supply. Travelers from Western Europe often wrote with amazement about the scale and sophistication of the city. To them, Constantinople appeared more advanced and far richer than any city they had known. Yet behind its wealth and beauty, Constantinople was also a place of intrigue and political struggle. The Byzantine court was famous for its complex politics, shifting alliances, and occasional conspiracies. Emperors could rise to power through inheritance, military support, or sometimes through palace revolutions. Power inside the empire was never entirely secure, and political maneuvering was a constant reality at the imperial court. Despite these tensions, Constantinople endured as the heart of the Byzantine world for centuries. Its walls protected it from invasions that destroyed many other cities. Its wealth attracted merchants and diplomats from across the Mediterranean, and its strategic position made it one of the most important cities in the world. Yet the very wealth and power that made Constantinople extraordinary also made it a target. For centuries, rival empires dreamed of conquering the city. Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, Crusaders, and eventually the Ottoman Turks all attempted to seize control of Constantinople. Some came dangerously close. For hundreds of years, however, the city continued to stand as a bridge between worlds. It connected Europe and Asia, linking cultures, trade routes, and civilizations. Its churches shaped the history of Christianity. Its markets connected continents. Its emperors preserved Roman traditions long after the Western Roman Empire had disappeared. Even today, the legacy of Constantinople continues to shape history. The city is now known as Istanbul, one of the great cities of the modern world. But beneath the modern streets lies the memory of the imperial capital that once dominated the medieval world. A city of massive walls, golden domes, bustling markets, and imperial power. The city that guarded the gateway between continents. The city the world once knew as Constantinople